Dragon Ball is far from a flatlined IP, but after the passing of Akira Toriyama, a question has been lingering. What will Dragon Ball be going forward? I see a number of options that the anime and manga can go with in the future, and I'd like to discuss what I'd like to see in the future of the anime and manga. Things like the current state of Dragon Ball and what I believe should happen to improve it from a fan's perspective, portrayal of characters in the story and what I believe should happen to improve them, the confidence Dragon Ball fans should have going forward in the likely event that the anime and manga eventually return, and potential projects I'd like to see as a Dragon Ball fan. Let's get started. The first thing I'd like to discuss is character portrayal and what I think needs to happen for it to be better. One of the major gripes I and many other people have had with Super is the butchering of characters like Goku and to a lesser extent Vegeta. Firstly, Goku needs to be the character he was before Super. Closer to the mentor role we see him in the Cell arc when he's training Gohan, or in the Buu arc when he's training Goten and Trunks the fusion dance. I think this is a pivotal part of Goku's character that needs to be focused on because the mentor side of Goku has been completely neglected in Super, and eventually he's going to have a new pupil in Oob. I'd like to see the mature Goku come back, which also is one of the biggest issues that Super had in portraying Goku. They portrayed him as an immature idiot. They made him stupid and irrational. Goku isn't stupid, he's a battle savant, and while his innocence and naivete pass for stupidity, if you go back through OG Dragon Ball and Z, you see how calculated his actions were and how even when he was miscalculating things, he wasn't exactly dumb about it. Like in the Cell arc, Goku misunderstood Gohan's disdain for violence, but he was correct that Gohan was fully capable of taking down Cell. Even when it comes to more traditional forms of intelligence, Goku at least knows the basics and picks up on the general idea of what's going on. He would also try to stay out of situations where his friends' lives would be at stake, and in situations where it was unavoidable that his friends would get roped into the danger, he would be the one to make the sacrifice play. And these are all things that Super didn't adapt into Goku's character, at least not in the anime. Him not knowing what a kiss is despite having been kissed by Chi-Chi in Dragon Ball and having 2 kids, or him being significantly more battle hungry even when it puts his friends and family in danger. At best, this could be regarded as negligent writing for a beloved character, and in worst cases, it could be seen as regression from who we've previously seen him as well as a far cry from who he needs to be to become Oob's mentor, as well as possibly being Kalen Khalifa's mentor, but I'll get back to that in a bit. As for Vegeta, his character wasn't too poorly portrayed in Super, and in a lot of cases I actually like who Vegeta became, but I would have liked it if some of GT Vegeta was seen into this Vegeta. I know that GT is not canon, but how Vegeta is portrayed in GT is really good. My biggest issue with Vegeta in Super is that he feels like he kind of regressed from who he was at the end of the Buu arc. Vegeta at the end of the Buu arc felt like a character who finished his whole character arc, and then Super came around so he had to pull back on that. And don't get me wrong, I like a lot of what they did with Vegeta, especially when it comes to him and his family, but I would have liked it more if it didn't feel like we took a step back while getting to this point. At the end of the Buu arc, Vegeta feels like he's found his place in the universe and is content. Super backtracked that slightly where he becomes more battle hungry like Goku, and while he doesn't endanger his family in the process like his rival does, he does regress. The Vegeta we see at the end of the Buu arc wouldn't be taking so much time away from his wife and son and eventually his daughter. But in Super, while he gets moments where he spends time with them, he does spend months at a time away from his family. The manga does depict both of these characters in a better way, but the manga isn't the version of these characters most people will be familiar with in regards to Dragon Ball Super, which leads me to my next topic. If we got the manga version of the Universe 6 tournament all the way up to the current stuff that's in the manga, I believe that would be a very solid direction for the future of Dragon Ball, especially if they're adapted as 12 to 24 episode seasons. If they hypothetically announce that sometime soon, that would also be a good time to bring back the Dragon Ball Super manga under the full direction of Toyo Taro, the person who Toriyama left in charge of the Super manga, which, for the record, has had a better reception amongst those that have read it than a lot of people have had to the anime, which struggled with many issues due to having many writers working on different episodes who didn't interact to make sure there was connection between the episodes. There would be things that need to be addressed or would be better off changed, like finding a middle ground between the anime version of the event and the manga version of the events, or just fully changing certain things, especially in the Goku Black arc. That is one of the best things to come out of Dragon Ball, period. That ending is horrible. Or if the Tournament of Power took more cues from the anime version of it. But I think overall, if the manga was able to get animated, that would be about as good of a start as we could hope for as Dragon Ball fans. It would also benefit content outside of the anime. If the manga got animated, things like Ultra Ego, Vegeta, Black Frieza, Moro, and Granola would be more likely to end up in new Dragon Ball games, or it could appear as DLC for a game like Sparking if it comes out during the window of support for the game, which, if the game gets some much needed balance patches, some DLC, and some more game modes, that game could last for a really long time. And if you're one of those people that says Sparking should not be balanced, you're gonna be part of the reason why this game dies in a few months. I'd also like to see the manga get adapted because we all know Dragon Ball isn't going anywhere. So if it is going to continue, it would be best to continue under the protege of Toriyama, because that's as close as we're going to get to having the man himself continue his story. I'm sure most fans would rather see the future of Dragon Ball helmed by somebody who loves the series like we do, rather than a company that sees dollar signs and does what they did with the current anime of Super, with disjointed writing, inconsistent character portrayals, and an overall lack of care for how things are done. We didn't need the movie recaps. That turned so many people off to Super when it started, myself included, and could only get back into it because people were talking about Blue Kaioken. Once again, myself included. Toyo Taro, regardless of what you think on how good he writes, is still leagues better than the writer's room of the Super anime 8 out of 10 times. This next section is a bit weird, but just bear with me for a second. I want Saiyans to embrace their Saiyan side more. I want Goku, Vegeta, and Gohan to get their tails back. I get that over time they became more human, but I liked it more when they had ties to their Saiyan heritage instead of just being humans under a different name. This is also one of the few issues I have with the Universe 6 Saiyans. Why don't they have tails? But back to the Universe 7 Saiyans, they don't have any ties to their Saiyan heritage anymore. Super Saiyan was fine for that, but now they don't use Super Saiyan. While technically God and Blue are Super Saiyan forms, they don't really feel like it, and Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego are God forms. And Gohan's Beast form seems to be an offshoot of his unleashed potential from the old Kai. They hardly, if ever, use their Saiyan-based powers now, at least not for anything important. If they got their tails back, the signifying sign of a Saiyan, I guarantee you the fans will be happy about that. It would be a cool callback to Dragon Ball where Goku had his tail, or in Dragon Ball Z when Vegeta and Gohan had their tails, at least in the early days of it. If they make it make sense for them to get them back, like the tail holding some potential in it, that would be even better. There's also what it could mean for the Universe 6 Saiyans. We know that eventually Kaba is going to train under Vegeta, or at least that's what they want to do. And I'd like to see Goku train Kale and Caulifla, or Gohan can help train Kale because she's also a wild card with potential like him. What if Goku and or Vegeta see the potential in the tails through these Saiyans that evolved to no longer have them? Instead of God forms, they could get something closer to Super Saiyan 4, which I've liked more in concept and in execution than I have for any of the God forms, bar Ultra Instinct Omen, because it's just drawing out the essence of what a Saiyan is. Harnessing the original Saiyan power-up. That would work well for the Universe 6 Saiyans who have very little connection to that part of their lineage and no longer have their tails. If it wasn't in the vein of Super Saiyan 4, then something like Broly's Wrathful State or some facsimile of a power based in the origin of the Saiyan race would be interesting. It could show the diverging paths of strength Saiyans could achieve without obtaining Divine Ki. If this was the route that was taken, I'd like to see Vegeta make a comment about wanting his tail back to signify him being a Saiyan and connecting to the less barbaric parts of his people, and Goku following suit now that he has some information on his family connections from planet Vegeta. But the real thing is, I just want them to have the Saiyan trademark back. Frieza spends his whole time on screen calling them monkeys, and they don't even have tails anymore. So if they got their tails back, I'd enjoy this series just that little bit more. Within Dragon Ball, there are infinite possibilities for offshoot series. And with the multiverse established in Dragon Ball Super, now we have way more stories with a bunch of interesting characters. But even with the base roster of characters that we've had, we could see a story like Goten and Trunks doing whatever they get up to, which I'd like to see because I want to like Goten, but he has no character of his own. And now that he's getting older, he doesn't have Goku's appearance. He might actually have his own character like he did in GT, instead of just being Trunks' lackey. As for the Trunks aspect of that story, Trunks has this unfortunate burden of always being compared to an infinitely better version of that same character. But if this was a route that they went down, he could still be a very interesting character to watch, especially with the proper development. As for multiversal stories, there's a bunch of stuff we could see from the Universe 6 Saiyan's perspective, or seeing Hit go on missions, or going to Universe 11 and watching the Pride Troopers, especially Jiren after he's embraced his connections to his team, go on missions. There could even be something simple and wholesome like Piccolo and Pan doing whatever they would get up to, which would make for some really fun short stories. I'm not looking for anything super complex, but some multiverse building would be nice, especially if Goku and Vegeta aren't at the center of whatever conflict arises. Because we've seen that if the story doesn't have them in it, it can still be really good. Stories with a de-escalated power scale would do Dragon Ball so much good. The escalating scale of the fights have had a net negative impact on Dragon Ball and the community. If we could go back to choreographed fights and exploration-based stories as opposed to who was capable of causing the bigger explosion, then the story could have some more discussions around it. Now, Dragon Ball fans not reading or watching the series they claim to be fans of is an issue all on its own, but series like these could help bring in fans who want more character-driven narratives or want something from the franchise that doesn't involve Goku and Vegeta breaking shit. Moving closer to the Dragon Ball style of storytelling as opposed to Z or Super, or finding the sweet spot between Dragon Ball and Z. That's just an idea though. This franchise has a lot of potential with lots of characters that a lot of people love, so spin-offs could be a viable way forward without really messing with the main story of Dragon Ball. The final thing I want to talk about today is, I think we as Dragon Ball fans should have some confidence that when it returns, Toyotaro and his editors will make the best decisions they can. He started off as a fan, writing fan manga, which caught Toriyama's eye and he was taken on as his protege. I think so long as he doesn't go too fanficky and starts introducing something like Super Saiyan 10, wow, that is something I haven't said since I was in like elementary school, then I think we should trust the vision that he has and that Toriyama saw in him when he picked him to work on the manga. I wouldn't be bothered with him adding his own style either, so long as it still feels like Dragon Ball and he doesn't divert too far into fanfic territory. Since we know Toei, Shueisha, Jump, and Bandai aren't going to just forfeit the goldmine that is the Dragon Ball IP, we can just hope and hold them to the expectation that they handle the story better than they have where Toriyama wasn't fully involved in the story. Dragon Ball is the most well-known anime in the world and deserves to be treated with respect from the companies that make content off of it for the sake of the fans who have loved this series their whole lives. When we get an anime for Dragon Ball Super again, it needs to be better than the one that we got. When the manga picks back up, we should give Toyotaro time to get back into the groove of it and expect him to do a good job as a mangaka. And when games are made, we should expect Bandai to put time and effort and the right amount of money behind it. Since Dragon Ball's definitely not going anywhere, I'll keep having hope that they'll handle it properly, and just hope that they meet those expectations. If there's anything you have to say, please leave it down below. I'm more than happy to have a dialogue with all of you. With that said, subscribe and have a nice day. Take care, everybody.